Hello, you're listening to Diasporic Music. Norman Richmond, Melinda Francis, Lisa Watson on the buttons, and we were listening to Hubert Winston McIntosh, a.k.a. Peter Tosh, a very talented young man who is not really recognized for the talent that he had. He could play every instrument. I'll talk about Peter later, but joining us on the line is El Jones, one of my favorites, coming out of from Cape Town to Nova Scotia. She is in Nova Scotia. El Jones, you're joining Melinda and Lisa. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me back.
Melinda put a gun to my head and says, "You must work El Jones." We have to represent all parts of Canada. And I guess the first thing I want to ask you is, what is the current situation for what's the current situation in Nova Scotia as we speak?
The current situation in Nova Scotia. Well, we're headed to Reunion Weekend, which is Africville Reunion. So for people that don't know, Africville is a community that was settled by largely refugees from the War of 1812, so Black refugees, but an independent Black community on the shores of the Bedford Basin that the city destroyed in the 1960s. So, and I'm sure you know about this, Norman. You must have been around for some of the activity around that with Rocky and stuff.
Yes. Right, Rocky Jones.
Yeah. So the city, so to rewind a bit, it was a Black community. And of course, people often, didn't have the land titles, but also had claimed the land and were doing things differently as well, like in terms of a revolutionary Black community in that sense, because as George Eliot Clark says, any Black community is revolutionary. And the city never provided city services, so there was no garbage service, no water, no sewage. In fact, they put the city dump in the middle of the community. They ran train tracks through it. It was close to the prison, the hospital for infectious diseases, so all forms of environmental racism. And then when the people still wouldn't leave, they began trying to buy them out. And when that didn't work, they sent in bulldozers in the middle of the night and bulldozed the church, and then put these people in dump trucks and dump truck them, literally garbage trucks and this stuff, and trucked them out. So once a year, every weekend, the families from Africville and descendants return to the land and have a long weekend where there's music, comradeship, food, etc., which is just to remind people of the claim over the land and then to keep the community together. So that's coming up at the end of July. So that's always a really important event here. So that's one thing and a bit of the history. And then, of course, Emancipation Day is coming up for you as well. But so, yeah, just another important weekend. That's close to Africville Reunion as well. So those are the sort of main things that happen in the summer. Emancipation Day, in fact, and again, this is another Rocky thing. So this is something that was celebrated in Halifax for a long time before the government finally, decided to make it an official day. And people used to hold a big parade and march up Citadel Hill, which was built by the Maroons, right? The fortifications. So people used to hold a big parade with drums and stuff and come through and then go up to Citadel Hill. And that sadly stopped for a few years. And then there was some ceremonies and stuff. And then now that the government has acknowledged it, I see those celebrations are back, Emancipation Day celebrations on the waterfront and stuff. But again, a long history of some of these African rituals, which leads me into my next point. So something that's actually concerning, I think, that we're seeing in the States and in many places is this growth of a really localistic, nationalistic, in the States, ADOS, right? African American descendants of slaves, which is fine. Obviously recognizing your own history. But what I'm seeing is that some of it is being used to separate Pan-Africanism and to suggest that, diasporic Africans are separate from each other and separate from Africa. And that's been kind of interesting and alarming to witness. More and more people suggesting, we're not Africans, and we also don't have allegiances to other Black people. And that's a growing movement, I think, in many ways, and that actually does concern me, especially leading up to something like Emancipation Day, where we're witnessing our togetherness. Go ahead, Norman.
I don't want to cut you, but Togo and this whole FBA thing is, I call it the Katanga province. In the Congo, you had Moise Tshombe had a thing for Katanga province. They're following the playbook of
CIA.
Yeah, straight up. It's tribalism in the 21st century, which is we know too much to be into tribalism at this late date in history.
And it's very interesting, isn't it, to see how much it's being pushed on social media and how much it's returned. I find it really interesting that, it seemed like everybody was pretty comfortable with a Pan-Africanist outlook. And now we're back to these very hyper-insular, you're not American, you're not a Black American, no one else should call themselves Black. And then I see that bleeding into our communities as well here. This person's not really Black, this isn't really Blackness. East Africans aren't us, Caribbeans aren't us, whatever it is, a lot of, very straight up division that's coming out of it. Yeah. And particularly in the ADOS movement in the States, and then also applied internationally. So things like, Palestine isn't a Black person's problem. We shouldn't care about it. Deportations aren't a Black person problem because we're already rooted here. So it doesn't matter. So very divisive from other groups and the root of Black radical politics as well.
And they also don't agree with the whole question of, not to mention the whole the division between Black and brown people. The whole. I grew up in Los Angeles, California, and we fought for the whole question of Chicanos, so-called Mexican Americans. We always had a relationship. Well, we tried to have a relationship. And they are support some of those ADOS folks and those FBA folks are supporting ICE over the Latinos, which is
because they're saying good, they're also taking Black jobs and they should be deported because we're foundational Americans, and you're like, what do you? So no, I mean it's a real thing though, right? It's a. Of course, anything that happens in the States, people like to mimic here. So you also see it moving up, But yeah, I find it a very alarming phenomenon when you read social media, message boards, places and then the hyper policing of who's Black and who's not Black, but not towards any political ends. In fact, towards often very apolitical ends, as seen with Beyonce wearing, a Buffalo Soldiers shirt. And then when Indigenous people pointed out that the Buffalo Soldiers were a genocidal force against Indigenous people, you had Black Americans being basically, so what? We don't care, or stop picking on Beyonce. And that's been followed up, of course, by her, how she's been brandishing the American flag around, And on the one hand, yes, okay, you're claiming that Black people founded America and Black people are part of the American story, which is true, but surely you have some critique of how that flag is used around the world, including against other Black people, right? But when that critique is lofted, you hear people just saying basically they don't care and you hate Black Americans, as opposed to recognizing the way that Black Americans have also been in many ways drafted quite literally, which is what Muhammad Ali's point was, right? This is why he didn't go to fight in an imperial war in Vietnam. This is why Martin Luther King, talked about beyond Vietnam, right? That extremely important Black Americans recognize significantly that Black Americans are, by virtue of being Americans, part of the genocidal imperial American state, and you have to take a stance against that. And of course, Black liberation in America cannot be separated from the liberation movements of other people from America across the globe. So yeah, that's my big bugbear right now. I find it very strange.
Well, let me say this. Dick Gregory had a critique of Bob Marley one time when they met. Dick Gregory told Bob that that Buffalo Soldier was a wrong thing, and Bob corrected it. He talked about that Buffalo Soldier, And the Buffalo Soldier, I think Betty Wright's husband, I think King Sporty is a Jamaican brother. I think he got credit. He and Bob were supposed to pin that together, but Dick Gregory definitely jumped on Bob about that Buffalo Soldier situation.
And I mean, of course, what was Bob's likelihood of knowing that until he was informed? But when you're informed, the reaction, which is again, like, do we need to, and I guess a complicated colonial history, as we know, right? That we have at various times, as all different groups being played off and used against each other, picked up and dumped around the globe in different ways. So one of the heroes in Nova Scotia, William Hall, first Black person to win the Victoria Cross, but it was awarded for his fighting against the resistance of the, so-called Indian Mutiny, right? So he was going and committing genocide for the British government. And we are always in those positions, right? Because we have fought in these wars, and we do it also to sort of often at the cost of our own lives. Like, it's very complicated, So a colonial history is not a simple history, but we shouldn't be afraid to embrace it. It's just I find it a very interesting sign of the times, especially given like what's happening in Palestine.
Oh yeah, now we need to stand with the with the Palestinians. Well, I'm speaking for most people. Well, all the people in our movement support the liberation of all oppressed people. Anybody that's oppressed, anybody that's getting their ASS kicked, I stand with them. That's I'm speaking for myself. And
I mean, I actually met with Afro-Palestinians when I was in Palestine, some of whom, had been in prison and fought as freedom fighters for Palestinian liberation. So quite literally, that struggle is not separate from our history. There are African people in Palestine.
Yes. And why should people support this particular radio show and this station?
Well, exactly for discussions like this. Where else are you going to hear a discussion about, CIA-led divisive movements that divide our Black identities? These are the discussions we need to have because, again, they're happening on these controlled spaces. X, Twitter is controlled by a alleged, we'll say, Nazi. Instagram, Facebook, Meta, like these are highly censorious corporate universes that not only feed us misinformation and ban us from saying things, but also do things like create these campaigns to create ideas like this. And I'm convinced that many of the things that Black people are being fed on social media are deliberate psyops. So we need to be in other spaces like this one where we can have these discussions without like agents. So that's one important reason. We always need a free Black space that is not a corporate space where we can have these discussions, also like listen to our music and talk about our history and do all the things that we need to do as a gathering place. So if you want to do those things, then you should fund this radio station.
And Melinda,
my time to do the digits, and so if you're on the computer, go to blackpower96.org/D_M. If you are stateside, you can use the Cash App. It's blackpower96. And if you're analog, I know there's a lot of people analog, and you want to call in your pledge, you could call in your station. Number is 1-888-979-2796. Again, it's 1-888-979-2796. 1-888-979-2796.
And L. Jones, let me say this: that John Henry Clark blames Trinidadians for Pan-Africanism. He says H. Sylvester Claudia Jones was born in Trinidad. Kwame Ture was born in Trinidad. George Padmore. Yeah, he says that Pan-Africanism is a creation of the Trinidadian mind. Yeah. What do you think about that?
Well, actually, my grandfather, I mean, he opposed Garvey, actually, my grandfather. So he definitely opposed the Black to Africa movement because he made the point, like, we built these islands here. Um, so he was not a Garveyite. He was a trade unionist, anti-colonial activist in Trinidad. I mean, Trinidad, in many ways, is in a unique position. If you look at Trinidad's history, extremely diverse, first of all, including many people from many different islands because it was, industry. So it was a richer island. So, you had people from across the Caribbean, very close to Venezuela. So Trinidad has always been a very cosmopolitan place. Spanish influence, French influence, African influence, Chinese, Indian, Portuguese. So I think that probably did, like, quite literally influence. They had a global mindset. Despite being such a small island, they were very much, I think, oriented. So many different histories from around the world, and then you add in, like, I mean, down with the British education system, but they were extremely well-educated people as a result, and obviously in a colonial, awful, classist, terrible way. But the result is that, the great Caribbean thinkers of that time were extremely well-versed and knew their SH, you know what I mean? When it came to reading and philosophy, I mean, people like Eric Williams, they knew, they were really, fine critical minds. So they had an outlook beyond themselves. They were reading from all around the world. They read prodigiously. They debated all the time. My mother always talks about, my grandfather, people always in the house, like, screaming and yelling at each other and smacking the dominoes, like that reasoning and debating is a big part of Trini culture. In Invisible Man, right? Like, the crazy person is the Trini, like, Trini's a loud and political, always have been. So yeah, I'll take it. I'm not surprised.
You're listening.
The other thing I wanted to, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm just going to, I've already said what I'm going to say. Go ahead.
Oh, I had one more thing. Have you seen 40 Acres?
Not yet.
A friend of mine told me, came up yesterday and was raving, foaming at the mouth, told me I might go see it. I'm going to go see it in the next couple of days, yes, because it might be out of the theater.
Foaming at the mouth in a good way or foaming at the mouth in a bad way?
A good way.
Yeah. I mean, do you want to see, like, Black and Indigenous people kill, like, white people? This is the movie for you.
Which side they're on? If they're on our side, no. But if they are on supporting colonialism, yes.
Well, no. So in a serious way, it's about land defense. So it's a multi-generational, multiracial Black and Indigenous family. It's set in kind of like a apocalyptic wasteland where all the animals have died, so farmland has become a hot commodity. And the American settlers that live in Canada, so Black Americans that have come to Canada and have had this land, and then they're beset on all sides by basically white cannibals, because now that animals don't exist, of course, white people would start eating, like, black flesh, right? So they have to defend the land while also trying to build, like, home and safety. So that's the basic film, but it's really about all these issues of safety and trauma and multi-generational and white supremacy and capitalism and climate change. Good movie.
Is it African born in Canada, or is he
No, they're African Americans. But it's sort of I can't talk. It's obviously reaching to that history of, like, Nova Scotia and Alberta, where, you have free Black people that have come and made community. But the main character, the mother, has actually fought in an imperial war for the U.S., so she's coming home from the war and then goes to this homestead of her ancestors who were Americans. So it's really like Amber Valley, like People Dawn, those kind of settlements in Ontario or Alberta and, Nova Scotia as well.
Well, I guess your album with the Cotton newspaper Contrast, he came out of that part of the world, and I think Harry Jerome was in that part of the world. Harry Jerome, great, the good sprinter. Harry Jerome went to 3. I think he might have went to 3 Olympics. Yeah, he was that was a bad brother.
His
Harry
sister
Jerome
has a book out about him, and it's wild.
Mm-hmm.
Like the racism that Harry Jerome experienced. I got, like, this pre-copy that I read, so I think it's out. but it's absolutely. I mean, they lived in like Winnipeg. They lived in BC, following the railroad. And the mother was born. Like, she was black but very light, and had all this trauma because her family only liked the light skinned kids, and then she enacted that on her own children, and so she was just like beating them, and then they were experiencing all this racism. Like, Harry Jerome's story is wild. So if anybody can see that memoir, I advise you to give it a read.
But Harry Jerome he ran in 3 Olympics. He was like he was a great. I mean, Harry Jerome was, and he had, and the power structure turned on him again. I mean, the press hated him. You would think, right? They treated him like, you could think he was like Adolf Hitler. Like, come on, man. His sister used to come through Toronto a lot. They're very politicized black people, and they lived through this. Like, anybody who believes that, there's no white supremacy innate to Canadian history. Again, like, when you read what the Jerome family was experiencing, people are burning their house down, like their neighbors. Like, they absolutely the most intense racism, and through that, he's running track. And then, of course, as a politicized political black man, the same thing that they did to Ali, the same thing they did to John Carlos and Tommy Smith, also happens to Harry Jerome, of course. And speaking of Canada, we had a great Dougie Richardson's father, Sammy Richardson, ran in the 1936 Olympics, and he ran the first leg on the relay. And actually, they said that he actually passed the baton before Jesse Owens, and he might have been 16 or 17 years old. But Sammy Richardson was Dougie Richardson was a great musician who was used to play in Bernie Mac's band, and he played with the OJs as well. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, but
so this is all good because you know what August is? Black August, which is advocated by many as an alternative to corporate Black History Month or African Heritage Month, whatever you call it. Is a month of remembering our liberation history, a month of many slave rebellions, many great Black revolutionaries were born in August. The first enslaved people touched down in Virginia in August, the Matt Turner Rebellion. So Black August is a month where we contemplate revolutionary Black actions around the world and also think about its application today. So this history is good, to really, again, like Black History Month is often just who was the first person to do this, who's the first person to do that. This really asks us to contemplate a much broader and more radical history.
When did the Haitian Revolution start? Was that in August?
Yes, I believe so. And then Sam Sharp's rebellion. There's a number of revolutions around the African globe that take place in August.
Sam Sharp was Jamaica, right?
Sam Sharp is in Jamaica, yeah.
Yeah, Sam, yeah.
And there's the Haitian Rebellion, I believe. There's some stuff in the South. Like, there's a number of, when you look at the list of things that happened in August, like, that's our month.
Yeah, August.
Basically, to clarify, the Haitian Revolution started August 21st. 1791. So yeah.
That was by Bookman, right? Bookman was.
Yeah, Ducky Bookman held the service.
Yep.
The ceremony.
Was Bookman from Benin, or was he born in Benin or Dahomey?
Yes, they were mostly Dahomey, right?
Yeah, but he was also Jamaica before.
Dahomey became Benin, right? But that's where, wasn't it many, a lot of Haitians, they brought a lot of the same ethnic group to Haiti? That was a big mistake.
Yeah, so it was a few things. The terrain was really hilly, and they brought in a lot of the Dahomey people were from a hilly, similar hilly background. Because, of course, people forget this with enslavement. They try to pretend that we were ignorant beasts. But, in fact, they were bringing us in for our expertise, right? They couldn't grow rice in the Americas and cotton. They didn't know how to do it. And then they went to African nations that were doing that agriculture and brought us in so that we could do it, right? So Haiti had a very similar terrain, but the Dahomey people yeah, like they were warrior trained. They hit the ground running, and it also allowed for a lot of marinage, right, because of the mountainous terrain. So you could go up into the mountains and conceal yourself, swampy, hilly. So the terrain benefited the escaped slave, and then of course they gave them cutlass to, cut at the cane, and that was also so. I mean, they organized and they used biological warfare, chemical warfare, mosquitoes, yellow fever. They used the terrain, and they beat all three major armies.
Right. And Barbados, they brought Africans from Barbados to grow the I guess the rice in South Carolina, I believe. Right.
Yeah, and that was why they, because the slave trade ends before enslavement, because it was things like the Revolution where they said we better stop bringing them in fresh from the continent. Let's see if we can breed our own, and they'll never have known freedom, right? So then we can control them, but that also didn't work. So that was why they tried to mix us up, of course, so that we couldn't speak to each other. They tried all kinds of social engineering around that, but it still failed, as August reminds us.
And I think we're almost out of time. We have to make one more appeal for the money, and I would like to reiterate what you said about ADOS and the FBA. Some people see FBA stands for should be FBI, but I'm talking about the leadership, not the not I shouldn't say followers. Some of the people that are following this philosophy are honest folks, but I definitely am going to condemn the leadership because they know what they're doing, trying to make some money and divide African people.
And as we've heard from this history, we have a global history, and as Black people, we always had a global history, and we learn from each other and share that. So this is what this radio show has done and always does, and will stay steadfast in doing. But they need your money to do that. The government doesn't fund you to talk about things like Black revolutions in history and why we should spend a month contemplating them. So if you care about Black liberation and freedom and the liberated Black mind, definitely give some money up to this radio station.
Yeah. Once again, thank you, El Jones and Melinda.
Thank you.
Your. Let me shut up and let you say what you're going to say. Sorry about that, sis.
That's okay. I'm just reminding where to go, where to donate money. Just to remind listeners that all our funding comes from, basically our listenership. So please donate, become a member. And the link, the web link is blackpower96.org/G, M. And if you're on the Cash App, it's Black Power 96. And if you're analog, you could call in your pledge, and the number is 1-888-979-2796. Again, it's 1-888-979-2796.
And once again,
thank you for having me, and I will talk to you guys soon.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Keep up the good work, my friend. Thank you very much.
You too. Take care. Bye.
All right. And we're getting ready to go to the Jazz Zone with T. Providence, and we're coming back with the Dr. Gerald Horn.